and welcome everyone. It's really good to see all of your lovely, friendly and many familiar faces. Not everyone is necessarily familiar, maybe folks here for the first time, and if you are here for the first time or second time, particularly warm welcome to you. I like to scroll through and just look at the screens, but I was told last week that everybody hears these clicks. Do you hear when I click through there? So I have to maybe do less of that. But anyway, it's great to see everybody, to see everyone's faces. I did a get out the vote webinar thing, a Zoom call a week ago with Marshall Gans, who's a legendary political organizer with Cesar Chavez and Obama's first campaign, and lovely to hear him. Teaches up at Harvard, and I just remembering he was sharing how he teaches people all over the world grassroots organizing to people in different countries, and he also teaches in-person classes, or was up at Harvard, and one of his students came, and she'd done the course online and then did it in person, and he asked how was it different, and which did she prefer, and she said she actually preferred it online, because rather than being in a classroom, where you look at the back of somebody's head and the instructor is way up front, being able to look at everybody, and it just, what he was sharing about that really resonated with me, because here, even if I can't look at all of the screens at the same time, to see like 25 different folks and see Barry there and everybody with their backgrounds and their rooms and their kind of a little bit of our lives, even though we're not in person, and I think all of us would probably prefer if we could be back in person, but given that we're not in person, I find it a really lovely way of being in connection together. And I was sharing beforehand with Pat and others, before this session, I do a live insight timer class online at 9 o'clock, and we have a really big group there, like we're 700 today. We don't have it like screen, so I can't see faces, but I can see people sharing in the chat, and it's even that is a lovely way of being connected with people, I think over 20-25 different countries around the world. So I just a reflection of how what a wonderful thing it is, and how grateful certainly I feel that we have this way of being together, and that we can not just be together, but we can hear each other, and we can see each other, and we can connect, and we can talk, and we can share. And I think, as Pat was saying around the chat box, if we you might just check in with yourself right now, and as we're beginning, and just see how are you doing? What are you noticing in the body and the heart and the mind? Any particular emotion, any particular bodily feelings, anything particular going on in the mind? Are you happy? Are you excited? Are you hopeful? There's some elections coming up in a few days. People might be vaguely aware of them in 9 days. He says facetiously, if you'd like to share though just how you're doing in the chat box, what's present for you, please feel free to do that. And it's a lovely way of being connected with each other during the time, during the class. Feel free to do that while I'm if anything comes up that I'm sharing, to share that in the chat box. I'm not going to respond at that stage to the chat, but we'll certainly look at it later, and and in the meditation, obviously, the invitation is to meditate rather than chat, but you might do some at the end. What I'm thinking a lot about in these times, and so again, just kind of welcoming us all, feeling us all together. We have around 90 folks on right now, connecting from all our different spaces. The theme that really is on my mind and has been for a while is the theme of hope. Hope, hope in anxious times, hope in difficult times. I want to really explore today how we hold this emotional mind state of hope, what place it has in our own lives. When you think of hope, hope for yourself, hope for your family, hope for the community, for the society, for the world. What is your hope? Is there something of, a story, a framework that, helps you to kind of make sense of your life and your place in the world? Or does it come up for you at all? Maybe it doesn't, I'm not saying it should. But I do feel for myself, and as I reflect on this theme of hope, which doesn't actually play a large role in the Buddhist kind of understanding, and I'll say why I think that is the case in a few minutes. But I believe that hope really is plays a vital role in our lives. Sometimes it's not necessarily very conscious. We don't necessarily have to have a narrative about it. Oh, I'm really hopeful that we can, elect a government that represents all of us, or that we can take on climate change and move through this kind of very difficult period we're living in terms of our planet, or in terms of our own lives. What might that be? It might be the hope, the aspiration to wake up, to find freedom in our lives, to live, in a less anxious, less stressed, happier, more joyful, more peaceful, ultimately a freer way in this life. Is that a hope? And if it is, how do we engage with this, with our hope? Because hope can be, I'll actually wait for a minute to talk more about kind of how we define hope and how we understand it. But I begin by really reflecting that, something that's obvious to, I think, all of us, that we're living in a very anxious time. 9 days from now, 9 days from the most consequential election of our lives. I think I'd safely say that. I can certainly say it for myself, and I'm sure for many of you, that this is more important than even, other elections, depending on how long we've been in this consciousness, in this life, may be able to look back to, Richard Nixon and Lyndon Johnson, or even JFK, or whoever, going back, or into the Carter, or Obama in 2008, 2012. But there's something I think we know that's really kind of almost, I would say, kind of existentially important about this election. I mean, it really makes a difference for the country, for democracy, for the rule of law, for climate change, for our world, for our relationship with the rest of the world. Don't need to go into that, but I would just kind of put that out. There was a really interesting article some of you may have seen on in the New York Times on what day was it? Last week, last Thursday. And the title of the hard copy, the newspaper itself, sometimes online they have a different title, but it's called "For Democrats, Horror Never Ends." Can you see that? Horror never ends. And it's, you know, obviously talking about the PTSD from 2016. And the article refers to a study by the American Psychological Association, the APA, which found that 68% of all American adults, 68% of, you know, those who sampled, of American adults said that the 2020 election was a, quote, significant source of stress. So 2 out of 3 Americans from this broad survey saw the elections as a significant source of stress. Perhaps unsurprisingly, just in saying PTSD, for Democrats, the number was 76%, and for Republicans, it was 67%. So independents a little bit in between. So 3 out of 4 Democrats, 2 out of 3 Americans sampled, a significant source of stress. And 77% said they were stressed about the future of the country. So in a more broad sense, outside of the election, just where are things going to go? That's pretty extraordinary, isn't it? 3 out of 4 people stressed for the future of the country, 2 out of 3 stressed by the elections. At least the elections will come to an end, and maybe if people are tested afterwards, they might have different numbers come out. And you know, I shared some statistics a few weeks ago about the rates of anxiety and depression that have increased. You know, people reporting by about 3 times. And it's understandable, very understandable, that people feel anxious. You know, particularly people on one side of the fence who felt very hopeful in 2016, only to have their hopes dashed. And, you know, many feeling, you know, not unwilling to allow themselves to open to the possibility of a hopeful outcome, just for fear that it will be snatched away again. Does anyone feel like, you know, it's very hard to hope, you know, to really open to a sense of, oh, of possibility, this could really happen, without the mind going into, yes, but remember what happened 4 years ago. So one response that we have is to really shut down hope. They have a quote from somebody, Helen Rosenthal, who represents the Upper West Side of New York City, on the New York City Council. So this is not just a regular civilian like the rest of us. And she says, "I'm assuming in my mind that Trump wins because I can't deal with being let down like that again. Secretly, in a little corner in the back of my mind, I'm wishing and hoping that Biden wins. But most of my brain is saying, okay, Trump wins and New York is not getting a fiscal bailout, and we're going to lose more ground on the environment. We're going to lose on Roe versus Wade. We're going to lose on healthcare. I'm already depressed about it, if that helps." It's a kind of interesting thing. I found it particularly interesting from I would have hoped for a little more hope from somebody who's an elected official, you know. But in a way, that does capture a lot of what many people are feeling. Many people, certainly on one side of the aisle, are feeling of like not really being able to, or willing or able to open to hope. So what happens there is, you know, we suppress hope. You know, we don't really allow ourselves to think, at least until the helicopter has flown off from the White House, that this actually things might go in the kind of direction that we want to go in. And I think a lot of what we do is maybe toggle between fear and hope. We hope for the, quote, good outcome, but then immediately the what if enters our minds. But what if, and then that's kind of like the awful scenario enters our mind. And, I'm not so sure this is helpful, because we're caught in attention. Then we're kind of this polarized thing of, we're hoping, yes, maybe, but then we go into fear again. And I think for our overall, our internal well-being and balance, I think we can get to a more helpful place than that. There, our hope is really tied to a particular outcome. And in Buddhist language, we would say that the hope is kind of affected by clinging. We're like, when we hope, it's like we're clinging to an outcome. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll be depressed, we'll be sorry, et cetera, et cetera. So I think what the point I would like to make, or the kind of a central point I'd like to make, is that I think it's really important to have hope. That hope, I think, is a very vital, and I use vital in kind of both senses, vital meaning kind of central, but vital also meaning kind of life-affirming part of our life. Because if we close down or shut down on hope because we're fearful of, what might happen, the bad things that might happen, then we're less alive, less connected, less engaged, less present than we would be if we can allow hope to be present and to cultivate it. But what I'm going to say is, I'm going to really specify that needs to be a skillful kind of hope, because hope can, when it is tied to an outcome, will lead us to suffering. I did a quick check of Webster's dictionary for definition of hope, and it said, hope is, this is a short one of two or three different definitions, but the main one kind of we're looking at, it defined it as desire with the expectation of obtainment. Desire with the expectation of obtainment. It's kind of like the wanting and tied to something that we're wanting. There was another definition of another dictionary, a feeling or expectation for a certain thing to happen. And in these definitions, hope is linked to an outcome of our expectations. And if we see hope in this way, we're naturally going to suffer. When the thing happens that we don't want to happen, when our hope is, our hope is not fulfilled, then we suffer. So hope in that sense isn't skillful hope. When we have expectations, they've been called, expectations have been called disappointments waiting to happen. An expectation is a disappointment waiting to happen. If we expect anything, I expect, I told a story of being on retreat and feeling very open and spacious on a retreat up in Barry, silent retreat. And I had a nice chocolate bar that I loved, with ginger in, a chocolate ginger bar. And I felt really felt really wanted to share that with the other yogis, the other participants on the retreat. And I left it on a shelf it was a dana shelf or a generosity shelf. And I would put it there with this idea of, oh, it wouldn't be lovely for people to have this nice chocolate that I love. And then half an hour later, I came back and it was gone. And I was outraged. I mean, in my meditative way, I kind of, what a greedy person coming and grabbing the whole bar. And so obviously I had in my mind kind of some expectation that people would take a couple of squares, and then other people. I hadn't really been generous because there'd been a kind of like a hook. There was an expectation that I had. And that for me, as it kind of taught me a lot, it would kind of like, oh, that's a really good teaching. I thought I was being generous, but I was actually had a kind of hook in there that I wanted something to come from that. So whenever we have hope in that way, which is tied to an outcome, we're going to suffer when things don't turn out that way. So is there a way that we can look at and embody hope in our lives that is a more spacious way, that isn't tied to this has got to happen? I'll only be happy if this happens. Now, looking at it in terms of the Buddhist teachings, it's interesting that as I mentioned earlier, that hope doesn't feature strongly in the classical Buddhist teachings. You know, if you look at the 5 this is and the 8 that's and the 4 this is, you know, the 4 noble truths and the 5 hindrances and the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the 8-fold path, and hope isn't really, not in any way that I've been seen, not really there. And I looked up a translation of hope for hope in the Pali language, the first language of the written teachings of the Buddha. And the word for hope is apekha, A-P-E-K-K-H-A, apekha. And it's not a familiar to me Pali word. And what's interesting is it's defined as a belief or expectation. So in the Pali dictionary, a belief or expectation that something wished for can or will happen. Something wished for can or will happen, which is very much the same as the definition, the Webster one. So indicating that in the kind of the Buddhist, in this Buddhist translation of this term, it's very much the same idea of hope, that if we hope, we're hoping for an outcome, and that hoping for an outcome has the quality of clinging attached to it. So understandably and not surprisingly, hope doesn't have in general, in classical Buddhism, hasn't had that kind of expansive and, if you like, more hopeful expression, but rather as more an afflictive quality. You know, if we're hoping, we're hoping for something, to get something, and our happiness is tied to that, ergo clinging, therefore clinging, and it's, I think about that and I think, well, it's actually ironic that one of the most inspiring examples of hope in human history is the story of Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha or the awakened one, and his journey to the end of suffering. To me, that is a story of hope, of somebody, he, excuse me, he left his life of luxury in the palace, as a noble, we had everything he wanted, and chose to become a spiritual practitioner, cut off all his hair, put on the robes of a monastic, became a wandering spiritual practitioner, with nothing, owning nothing, because of, I see it really as because of a hope, a sense of possibility that he could find an end to suffering, that in this lifetime, there was, even with sickness, aging, death, loss, all the things that we know are part of life, that there was freedom even in the midst of this. And it was a sense of possibility. You could call it certainly faith as well, and in Christian teachings, the 3 virtues, central virtues are faith, hope, and charity. Faith, the kind of belief, hope, that kind of aspiration, charity, the kind of compassion or generosity. In Buddhism, not so much so for the reasons I've mentioned, but the Buddha's own life really is, I think, an expression of hope, of a belief in possibility and a kind of acting on that belief, of hoping that, not a hope of like a vague, oh, maybe it's possible, and not a hope as like it's got to be, although excuse me, although for a time in his practice, it did have more of a clinging quality to it. You know, he punished himself, you know, kind of doing the austere ascetic practices. If you're familiar with that story of the kind of the Buddha's life, you know, thinking that punishing the body, not eating, not drinking very much, living on a grain of rice a day, at least in the stories that have come down, you know, not wearing many clothes at all in the cold of the night and the heat of the day and all of that. But realizing, so there was a kind of maybe a clinging quality to that, but then letting go of that, but still having the determination to practice, to see clearly, to let go of clinging and to wake up. So ironically, at least for me, that journey of Siddhartha, that quest, that search, really is a journey of hope. You know, the hope, the possibility for himself and his life, and the possibility for all beings being able to find freedom in our lives. And I think we can look at our spiritual practice very much in terms of hope. You know, the hope, the possibility. And I'll talk about the kinds of hope, the qualities, I think, of hope that I think are important, or really important, or essential, really, that they not be tied, that our hope not be tied to clinging, that it be tied to, linked to compassion. And just to note as well that many of the great stories that we connect with, that give us hope, really are stories of hope. You know, we think of, you know, in the Jewish tradition, Moses leading the people of Israel out of bondage towards the promised land. I mean, that's if anything, could be seen as a journey of hope, not knowing where it's going to go, not knowing what, how it might unfold. You know, think of Martin Luther King, Dr. King, and that whole vision, his March on Washington speech, or the speech of, I've been to the top of the mountain, I've seen the promised land, I may not get there with you, but we will get there. Our people and people, all people will have the possibility of freedom, of justice, of living lives of dignity that had been denied for centuries. Again, that's a story, a vision of hope. You think the same of any kind of liberation struggles. That's kind of more on, it's political, but it's very much about human freedom. Societies struggling against, people struggling against dictatorship. Think of Nelson Mandela and the ANC in South Africa for decades. That vision of a society where all people would have the right to live freely, to vote, to express themselves. Think of Gandhi and in India, in the 20s and 30s, and the struggle against British rule there, and how really hope brings us together. It kind of focuses our own minds and hearts on something that we value. We may not get there, but we're motivated, we're inspired, and we're inspired collectively when a vision of hope can be presented that people can, come together around. I mean, I think of the question of climate change, and it's an area where it's almost easier to feel despair as to feel hope. There's very, very calm and balanced analysis, a lot of it out there, that suggests that we may already have passed the point of no return. You know, that things have been set in motion, that whatever we do in the next 10, 20 years, and you know, that's something, and that's incredibly sobering. And where does hope fit in if that is, you know, that is your assessment, not what you want to have happen, but just like where we are. There's I read an article by a Dharma teacher who's also been a journalist and active for decades on the climate issue. And she wrote this piece called Facing Extinction, Catherine Ingram, Facing Extinction, and really talking in a very sober and very, I mean, compassionate and present way, but from a standpoint that we may already have passed that point, you know, where our actions may not make a difference. That's not where everyone is. And I say the kind of the dominant kind of paradigm right now, I think among activists as well as scientists, is that we have a very short period of time to really change in fundamental ways. And what I'm coming to is like, what would it mean to really have a shared vision of hope? Let's say things unfold well over the next few weeks, over the next 90 some days till January 20th. And there's a kind of a new possibility opens up. What might that look like? What might a hopeful vision that links, you know, a sense of possibility around the climate, as well as I could talk about many, many other issues, but just focusing for a moment on the climate. What would that look like where we're all together, you know, in some way, at least the majority of people, or a very large plurality of people, we're actually kind of saying, yes, we want to take this on. You know, you could think of it as kind of like in World War II, you know, when it's existential and people, in a sense, have no choice and want to get together and say, yes, we've got to do everything. What would it look like? What would it look like if we had that approach to the pandemic, you know, to COVID-19? We might still be able to do it. Better late than never. So that idea of hope, of that sense of possibility, that shared story, if you like, that we come together around. Maybe we have different expressions of it, but around a central story of hope. And I think we're coming into a period where it's going to be really important to have a shared story or a number of shared stories of hope that bring us together, coming out of this dark period. I hope, coming out of this dark period, which I think of as a collective dark night of the soul of this last 4 years, that allowing ourselves to open to hope, individually and collectively in this period. And so in this final little piece of what I want to share in this next 6 or 7 minutes is to talk a little bit about some of the Buddhist expressions of hope. But before that, I actually want to share a non-Buddhist expression, but from a wonderful being, Václav Havel, you know, the great playwright and dissident in what was then Czechoslovakia, who went on to become president of Czechoslovakia and then of the Czech Republic. Here's how he speaks of hope, and I think it speaks to what I think of as a really positive Buddhist vision of hope as well. he says that the kind of hope I often think about, especially in situations that are particularly hopeless, such as prison, and he spent a number of years in prison under the Soviet-linked government, bloc government. I understand above all as a state of mind, not a state of the world. It's a dimension of the soul. It's not essentially dependent on some particular observation of the world or estimate of the situation. Hope, he says, is not prognostication. It's not a prediction of what will happen. It's an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart. And I love that, an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart. He says it transcends the world that is immediately experienced and is anchored somewhere beyond its horizons. He goes on to say, he says it's an ability to work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed, because it's good. We do it because it's right. We do it because it's the compassionate thing, the right thing, the wise thing to do, not because we think it's going to succeed. He says the more hope, the more unpropitious the situation in which we demonstrate hope, the deeper that hope is. So in the desperate situation, the hope can go deeper. Think of African Americans living under slavery, and this in my own addition, but how hope was kept alive by a vision, linked to, Christian teachings, biblical teachings of freedom and Jesus and redemption, and that possibility was kept alive. He goes on to say, hope is definitely not the same thing as optimism. It's not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. It's not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. He goes on to say, it's also this hope above all, which gives us the strength to live and continually to try new things, even in conditions that seem as hopeless as ours do here and now. And he was talking about that in the, in the late 80s, under the Eastern Bloc regime, still in power. Coming at hope from a Buddhist standpoint, and one that's not linked to clinging. Wonderful teacher Joan Halifax, Zen teacher, a writer, and the abbot of the Upaya Zen Center in New Mexico. She speaks of wise hope. She shares how she said, a good part of my life has been spent relating to situations that might be deemed hopeless. As an anti-war activist, a civil rights worker, a caregiver of dying people. She said, I've also volunteered with death row inmates, served in medical clinics in remote areas of the Himalayas, where life is hard, food is scarce, and access to healthcare is nil. I've worked in Kathmandu with Rohingya refugees from Burma who have no status anywhere. You might ask, why bother? Why hold out hope for ending war or injustice? Why have hope for people who are dying, or for refugees fleeing from genocide, or for solutions to climate change? And she goes on to say, I've often been troubled by the notion of hope. But recently, in part because of the work of social critic Rebecca Solnit and her powerful book, Hope in the Dark, I'm opening to another view of hope, what I call wise hope. She says, as Buddhists, we know that ordinary hope is based in desire, wanting an outcome that could well be different from what will actually happen. Not getting what we hope for is usually experienced as some kind of misfortune. So that's what I've been talking about, as a certain kind of hope. Someone who's hopeful in this way has an expectation that always hovers in the background, the shadow of fear that one's wishes will not be fulfilled. This ordinary hope is a subtle expression of fear and a form of suffering. So I spoke about that, I had that with my chocolate bar. Something was hovering there of wanting there. But she says wise hope, Joan Halifax says, wise hope is not seeing things unrealistically, but rather seeing things as they are, including the truth of suffering, both its existence and our capacity to transform it. It's when we realize we don't know what will happen that this kind of hope comes alive. In that spaciousness of uncertainty is the very space we need to act. So that idea of hope where it's really tied to not knowing, and not knowing, is essentially is not clinging. Because if we're really in a not knowing space, we can't cling. We can't cling if we're not knowing. There's nothing to cling to. And if we do cling, then we've moved into clinging, and it's become a contracted kind of hope. So she's presenting a wise hope where the heart is open, we rest in our experience of the present moment, but we envision, what is possible, what might be possible. So is it possible to cultivate and nurture hope, even when things seem desperate? And perhaps openness to despair, and what I've reflected on climate, the issue of climate change can be one of those areas. Another really beloved teacher who's in her 90s now, and an environmentalist, activist, writer, Buddhist scholar, Joanna Macy, speaks of active hope. She says active hope is something we do rather than have. And she says it involves 3 key steps. First, we take a clear view of reality. So very similar. We take our ground on things as they really are, here and now. Second, we identify what we hope for in terms of the direction we'd like to see things move in, or the values we'd like to see expressed. So the vision, kind of the sense of envisioning where we're going, what we would want to see without clinging. And third, we take steps to move ourselves or our situation in that direction. So the envisioning and the taking of steps, this is active hope. So what would it, in relation to anything that we want to see happening, what might that look like in our lives? So what I'm going to finish up with is just to kind of pull together some of the elements, what I see as the key elements of wise hope, active hope, kind of the Buddhist understanding of hope that can serve as a way of seeing, as a story, or as different stories that can move us towards what we believe is beneficial, hopeful, what leads to freedom. And I think that's a fundamental criterion. Does this hope, whether in our own lives or in our collective, individually or collectively, does it move us towards freedom? Is our hope, our wise hope, a way of seeing that leads us towards freedom? Because if it leads us towards suffering, then I think it's not a good path to go down, if it's clinging to outcomes. But can we have a vision of hope that actually can bring us together to kind of unify our own intentions and our effort and our actions and our collective intentions and effort and actions, moving towards what will be of benefit to all of us, to all beings? So key elements are acknowledging the truth of where we are. Secondly, opening to a vision, a story, a skillful story, a wise collective way of viewing things, where we wish for the well-being of all. that we're not clinging to particular outcomes, particular ways things will unfold. And then we envision a path of action to move us towards that goal, whether it's climate change or around, social justice, economic justice, or freeing our own hearts. And then we take steps to bring our vision into effect, to make what we want to see happen, what will be for the benefit of all happen. So what I would like to do is just invite us to kind of move into the meditation that's taking this theme, and however it's landed for you or is landing for you, and invite you to ask yourself, what role does hope play in your life? Is there a skillful way that you can cultivate hope that will be, freeing, will help free your heart, that will help you perhaps live more wisely, more compassionately, more freely in the world, and move towards some vision that that will be for your own benefit and for the benefit of all. Can you cultivate, develop? Would it be something that you might incline your mind and your heart to in this period of cultivating, inviting active hope, wise hope? Maybe thinking of the elections coming up, so without holding on to outcomes, thinking about, things unfolding in a way that, will be of overall of benefit to the majority of people in the country and the world. What might that, what would your own hope be, your hope, your vision for the country, for the world? And what might your own role be within that? Within that vision, what steps might you take? And maybe it feels premature to do this right now, and that's fine. Just letting yourself open to it as a possibility, even if it's something that's not, hard to connect with right now. Just maybe planting a seed if that's helpful to you. And just coming into the body. You might consciously drop down out of thinking. There's obviously a lot of thoughts involved in what I've been sharing, reflections, thoughts that have come up for you, obstacles, feelings. Just opening to whatever's present for you right now. You might take a few deeper breaths to help you settle, arrive. See if you can relax any sense of wanting to get somewhere or have things be a certain way. And as much as you can, just open to what's present for you right now. The deeper breaths can help us relax and settle, arrive more fully. And as you do that, check in with your body. Can you relax any area of your body a little bit more? Maybe the shoulders, or the eyes and the face. the chest and the belly. Letting the breath be an invitation to relax the body. Cultivate a sense of, some sense of ease, of well-being. Nowhere that you need to be or nothing, nowhere to get to right now. Just being here, feeling yourself where you are. Feeling yourself in this collective space, all of us together. If it's helpful, you might invite a smile. A smile too can help us relax and settle. Help us come out of the doing mode, the sense that we need to change things or get somewhere or get away from something. The smile invites the brain and the nervous system to relax. So if it's helpful, thinking of a loved one, somebody who easily makes you feel happy or joyful. If you can, connecting with a sense of well-being, maybe some sense of ease, perhaps somewhere in the body. Taking a moment to appreciate what you have in your life. Maybe some things in your life that you're grateful for. You know, whatever it is that comes up for you, loved ones, friends, health, nature, maybe your practice. Maybe grateful for everyone who's here. Grateful for community. Whatever it is for you right now. Reflecting on gratitude, on things in our life that we're thankful for, can help us step out of more difficult, more afflictive states. Angry, annoyed, anxious. But then if we think about things that we're grateful for, we just automatically kind of step out of those more difficult mind states or emotions. And letting the breath come back to its natural rhythm if you're breathing deeply, just letting the breath settle and open to whatever's present for you in the body, the heart, and the mind. The invitation is to meet whatever's present, whatever is arising with acceptance, with kindness, welcoming the guests. meeting whatever is here with a receptive attitude. Receiving perhaps this tightness in the chest. Receiving this deeper in-breath and out-breath. Receiving this moment of restlessness, maybe a feeling of agitation in the body, or maybe a little tiredness in the mind. Just making space, allowing what's here to be here, to come, letting it be, and letting it go. Seeing if we can change our relationship to our experience from one of controlling and changing or resisting to one of allowing, just letting be. Maybe breathing in a sense of letting be, the words letting be. Letting the breath be a focus for your attention, just an anchor, letting you rest in this moment, if that's helpful to you. Just a light attention on the body breathing. Helping anchor you here with your experience. And when the mind does go off into thought, as it will at times, maybe sometimes quite often, just gently and kindly come back again. See if you can come back gently with kindness, without judging yourself or criticizing yourself, just gently, kindly coming back, training our minds in this way, being here and then coming back when the mind has gone off. When I share a reading from Carl Sagan's book, Pale Blue Dot. This was inspired by an image taken at Sagan's suggestion by Voyager 1 on the 14th of February 1990. As the spacecraft was departing our planetary neighborhood for the fringes of the solar system, it turned it around for one last look at its home planet. Voyager 1 was about 6.4 billion kilometers, 4 billion miles away, 4 billion miles away, and approximately 32 degrees above the ecliptic plane when it captured this portrait, and it's a photo of our world. Caught in the center of scattered light rays, a result of taking the picture so close to the sun, Earth appears as a tiny point of light, a crescent only 0.12 of a pixel in size. And then Sagan says, look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines. Every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph, they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from somewhere, from elsewhere, to save us from ourselves. The earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit, yes. Settle, not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of this folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. So I think Carl Sagan's reflection, at me I find a beautiful reflection, is really a vision, a story, really a cosmic story of hope. that can help us kind of incline our minds towards what we can do to live kindly and compassionately with each other, and ensure that this minusculely short experiment in human life over the last 100,000 or a couple of 100,000 years, which is itself a speck in cosmic time in the 14 billion years almost of since the Big Bang, that we can live together and that we can work to continue this human journey in a way that serves the well-being of all of us and the other creatures we share the world with. I want to show you the dot, pale blue dot. It's just right in the middle there. You might be able to see it. Or maybe I have to come out a little further, or maybe you can't. Maybe it's too small to see. But anyway, if you want to see that on your computer at home, it is salutary to see how minuscule we are in the scheme of things. Emily, would you like to lead us in some movement? Then we'll have some sharing and a closing meditation.
Yes, I'd love
to. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. So for those who'd like to join me, please take a moment to stand up, and gather the energy of all those stars, of our sun. And as is so beautiful, that pale blue dot that we reside on. And bring that energy to your heart. And gather the energy of all of this community together. The love and compassion we hold, and kindness. And bring that energy to your heart. And then gather the energy of the abundance of this earth, that which nourishes us. And I'd like to invite you to swing, just swing from side to side. The wide open space of your arms, feeling the air around you, the breeze you create. And then slow it down. Slow it down, getting the brain's attention. And then turn your palms up and reach up, lengthening, grasp your right hand, your right wrist in your left hand. Breathe in. Exhale, tilt towards the left. Short inhale into your right rib cage. Exhale, release, seeing if you can drop down. And then rise up, inhaling. Switch wrists. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, tilt to the right. Short breath in, lifting slightly. Exhale, releasing again, down to the right. And inhale to center. Float those arms down and move your shoulders individually. Your own shoulder dance, and move them the other way. And then place your hands behind your back, clasping them at your waist. Inhale and lift your head, your chest, lengthening your arms. And exhale back. Inhale, lift your head, your chest, lengthen your arms away from each other, the waist. And exhale back. Last time. Inhale deeply, lengthening, lifting. And exhale, release, float your arms out, flying. And the last movement. Get ready for a forward bend, placing your hands above your knees. Deep breath in. Exhale, release down, allowing gravity to pull your head, your shoulders, your upper torso down, feeling the strength of your pelvis, your legs, and dropping down, taking a breath here. Exhale, release, and down and down. And then place your hands back above your knees. And inhale, roll up. Place your hands at heart center and release to the sky. Release to the room and to the earth. Thank you. Great to be with you.
Thank you. Lovely as always. So grateful, Emily. Thank you. Thank you. And Pat, I think could we do 10 minutes in groups of 4?
We sure can.
Thank you. And and if you'd like to just share a little each in turn, mindfully speaking, and maybe have a theme, if you'd like, of what hope means to you in this time, and what it might mean, and or whatever you would like to use, sharing a little about how you're doing with others there. So see you on the other side. But those are good observations, Linnea, and I think each one of us can kind of take it in reflectively. I do have one thing to share with Pat that Brian brought up with me, is I noticed today we reached 100 people and then we went back down again, and I'm wondering if our system is set up to have more than 100, because it is set up to have up to 400 or 500. So that's just something to be aware of. That's kind of more
I'll check to make sure that it's still set up for 500.
Yeah, just so that while I remember that. I invite anyone to share now in the chat of anything that's come up for you, anything, how you're feeling about how the group went, the talk today, the meditation, the Carl Sagan, and anything you'd like to. And it's a nice way for us to be connected. And so we're kind of coming to the end of our time, I do want to finish with a meditation today. What we've done in a kind of informal way is we've extended the class to from 12 to 12:15 finish time, just because for a while there we were finding it really tight to do a talk, to do the sharing, the group sharing, to do the opening meditation, to do a final meditation. And I think it's been working pretty well. And if people are able to, I think it's great if we can stay till 12:15 or 12:10, something like that. And just so that we know that. And if people need to leave, obviously, anyone's free to leave whenever they want to or need to. So I just want to share before we go into the meditation. I hope that the talk, the reflection, kind of may have spurred some thoughts for you, some thinking about, how we hold this quality of hope, and whether there may be for each of us ways in which we shut down on possibilities, whether we put it in the language of hope or the language of possibility. I think it's a very important area to explore for each one of us, and also to connect with that larger vision of hope that I was talking about more towards the end, of like because if we are to move out of this period we're living in and engage really in a wholehearted way with the incredible challenges of our time, we do need those shared stories, those shared visions of hope. And the more I think we make that explicit, the more I think we have the potential for allowing ourselves to open individually and collectively to work together, to move together in the direction of healing the society, healing our world, connecting with each other, and the sense of what is possible for us individually in terms of freedom in our lives, and what is possible for us collectively, living together on the earth and living together in this society. In America in 2020, where I think almost everyone on the call is today. Maybe there's a few folks who are joining us from other continents, other countries. So what I'd like to do in the remaining time is just have a short meditation to finish, and then a few announcements. So we'll be finished within the next 10 minutes at least. So I'd invite you to, if you'd like, to close your eyes and bring your attention inward. I've had a lot of opportunity to take in information, have the earlier meditation, and for most, a time of sharing with a few others, what's coming up for you, what's coming up for others, what people's aspirations and hopes might be, what their challenges might be. And then just holding all that's present out of what's come up this morning, what you may already have been bringing to this day. Just invite yourself to meet that with kindness and with care, with compassion. Letting yourself arrive again and settle. And making space for whatever is here right now. Holding your experience, holding really your life with with compassion, with care, caring about this life. Holding yourself with kindness, with loving kindness. You know, it's very easy for us to be judgmental and harsh and critical towards ourselves. And often we don't take the time to meet ourselves and meet our experience with compassion and with kindness. So we can formally, in a very conscious and deliberate way, wish ourselves well. You could put a hand on the heart and just wish yourself well. May I be safe and free from harm. And breathe in, consciously, intentionally, breathe in a wish for yourself that you be safe, that you be free from harm. May I be happy. Just wishing for yourself that you be happy. You can experience joy in your life. May I be peaceful. We all know how it feels to be stressed and anxious and worried and busy. Just wishing for yourself that you be peaceful, that you know peace and calm in your life. Sense of ease. And breathing in that wish, a wish of peace. May I live with ease and with kindness. Whatever other wishes, words, phrases come up for you, resonate for you. Caring for this life, this being, this form in which you've incarnated, come into consciousness, each one of us in these forms, these bodies, these hearts, these minds, on this pale blue dot, the Milky Way, in this endless cosmos, connecting here with each other, all of us here together, with these shared intentions of waking up, living kindly and compassionately. We may not always act in these ways, in this way. We may often get angry or get caught up in afflictive states. But having this intention, or these intentions, to live wisely and compassionately in the world, connecting with all of us here. You might send out some wishes of loving kindness to individuals, to the group as a whole. May you be safe and free from harm. May you be happy, truly happy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease and with kindness. It's connecting with whatever resonance those words or phrases or your own phrases have with you. Taking in whatever bodily feelings. Perhaps visualizing everyone being happy and safe, peaceful. Feeling ourselves held in this field of loving kindness, all of us here together. And letting the wishes go out into the world, out into the suffering world, out into the country with all its stresses and all its divisions, all the pain, and wishing well everyone, without exception. May you be safe and free from harm. May you be happy, truly happy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease and with kindness. Just these final moments, just letting those wishes go outward into the world, into the country and into the world, including the humans and the other species. To all beings everywhere. This poem, Oceans, by Juan Ramon Jimenez. I have a feeling that my boat has struck down there in the depths against a great thing, and nothing happens. Nothing. Silence, waves. Nothing happens, or has everything happened, and we are standing now quietly in the new life? Nothing happens, or has everything happened, and we are standing now quietly in the new life. Thank you. And just very briefly, before I pass it to Christine, I think, just share that if anyone would like to explore a little more deeply some of the issues around these particular times we're in right now, at 1 o'clock today, we will have our Mindful Engagement 2020. It's an opportunity to kind of explore and work with all that's coming up for us at these times in this period, particularly in relation to the political world and the elections and everything that's coming up. So that'll be at 1 o'clock here. I mean, there's I think a different link for that. I'm not sure. Maybe I have to work that out. It's on the IMCW website anyway. We can share that. Also, if anyone would like to, I do have the session at 9 o'clock before this class on Insight Timer. And that's another lovely opportunity to practice together with people all over the world. Just to mention, and large majority of you are very familiar with this, but if you're new, we don't, there's no set charge for the class, but you are invited if you're able and inclined to make a donation. The this is how the practices and the teachings have come down to us through 2,500 years, through the practice of generosity, or dana as it's known. And Pat, I think, will be sharing links to send dana if you're able or inclined to do that. So appreciate your support in that way.